Hi everyone, good afternoon. Thank you for signing up for our webinar, Nurturing Next Generation for STEM. We have our speakers and panelists here with us. Can I invite our speakers and panelists to on your video? To say hi to everybody. Okay. Let us introduce today. We're gonna have our opening speech by Michu, who is the MD for the Worldwide Public Sector Amazon Web Services. She's also our president for the Women in Tech chapter. And followed by that, we will also have Annie. She will be, empowering us more, of especially women itself in tech and driving the women in tech beyond diversity. Annie is the talent head acquisitions and diversity outreach of APJ for Citrix. And I guess many of us can also relate to Clara. She's also our next speaker on how to break into tech, coming from a non-technical background. You're gonna hear her story, how she, who graduated with a psychology degree, but is now working in the IT industry. And after that, we will also have our panel discussion, which is joined by Arti, who is the customer service director from Linking. And also we have John Goldstein, which is the head of page executive. And I'm sure that this will be a very informative webinar that we're gonna hear from them. So I'll hand over the time over to Li Chu.
Thank you so much, Rachel, and good afternoon, everybody. I am delighted to be a part of this webinar on Nurturing Next Generation for STEM. And this is actually jointly organized by the Women in Tech chapter for Singapore Computer Society and Citrix. Allow me to first introduce myself. As Rachel mentioned, I am the Managing Director for AWS Public Sector in ASEAN. And I've been very privileged to have been appointed to lead the Women in Tech chapter as well for Singapore Computer Society. I just wanted to share and start off by saying that the Women in Tech chapter for SES actually has 4 key priorities or 4 key objectives. First of which is to create a platform to encourage nurturing of more female leaders. It is also, in our mind, an important, opportunity through the chapter to foster networking as well as to build a community for knowledge sharing. Third of all, it is to promote talent development, and last but not least, to provide and to build thought leadership in technology. So you can see that encouraging an interest in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, and influencing more women to pursue careers in technology is top of mind for the chapter. Why is it important to nurture the next generation for STEM? Given the critical shortage of digital skills required in Singapore to drive digital transformation as well as economic recovery, women, according to World Bank, constitutes about 41.8% of the workforce in 2020. So you can see that we can also contribute to the solution of this skills shortage. In recent years, we have seen an increased focus, thankfully, in diversity, in inclusion, and equality across all the industry segments, including technology. So firstly, I want to say how thrilled and how appreciative I am to be working in a company like AWS. AWS is an organization that supports inclusion, embraces diversity, and also promotes equality. I grew up in a time where gender stereotyping was a big part of growing up. And girls then were encouraged to join certain professions because it was deemed as more appropriate for our gender, like teaching, social work, nursing. And having switched from a non-technical background into the IT industry almost by chance, many, many years ago, and finding myself truly enjoying it, it has made me realize how important it is to make technology enablement programs more accessible to young graduates as well as early career talent. So having now been in the IT industry for all these years now, I know and I'm firmly convinced that the industry is richer with the experience from diverse perspectives and diverse backgrounds. So I am glad that we are discussing how to nurture this next generation for STEM. You know, as I reflect on my own career and on different experiences that paved the way to where I am today, I know that sometimes the nurturing process can be as simple as helping someone build confidence in themselves to take that leap so that they can explore their full potential. At the industry and the national level, creating platforms for nurturing women in tech, which is what we strive to do in the WIT chapter in SCS, I think and I believe will reinforce the importance of keeping diversity and inclusion as a priority that is necessary and required to build the resilience and the future workforce. So we have a very exciting lineup this afternoon with very distinguished speakers to share with you their experiences and their thoughts on how you can be a part of this tech world. And we know they have many practical tips on how you can be successful in the digital economy. On that note, let me pass the time across to Annie to share with us on the topic of digital dexterity and empowering women in tech. Annie, over to you.
Thanks very much, Li Chu, and thank you, Singapore Computer Society, for having me. I just want to make sure that you can hear me and can see my slides. Okay, not a problem. Thank you very much. Well, thank you, Li Chu, for sharing back your experience. You know, like myself, I come from a family of 4 girls. And so when my parents have to raise 4 girls, I can always understand, you know, what are their hopes, you know, for their children to grow up, you know, in an environment whereby it is inclusive. So once again, thank you for having me. And today, in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to share with you my personal experience and how Citrix contributes to the technology sector, to growing STEM. And this is a sector that is tremendously exciting, and we are bringing about cloud adoption. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. I know the transition sometimes can be a little bit slow. All right. All right. So many lack understanding about the roles in technology in this industry. And sometimes these may be preventing women or even younger generation from joining. I personally came from the healthcare, pharma, life sciences industry and did not have prior experience with technology background. So many women and male champions in my network has helped me to rise up and discover that one does not necessarily need to have math or technology background to enter or reinvent themselves into the technology world. Here I'd like to share a little bit more about my roadmap. What did I do? So when I shared back with others that I'm going to go into the technology world, they say, Annie, are you sure? You know, you've never come to technology industry before. It's going to be very fast paced. And some even tell me it's going to be quite brutal. There's so many things that you have to learn. And after like 20 over years of working, are you sure you want to go into technology industry? And to that point itself, right, I tell myself, well, in order for me to successfully go en route into the technology industry, one of the first things that I do, even when I go into healthcare, pharma, life sciences industry, I build my own roadmap. All right, so how do I build my roadmap? So I think about how can I nurture STEM in myself? You know, how can I nurture STEM in this industry? I'm going to share back with you. The first step is that I realized that quickly, a roadmap is required for me to build a solid action. And then this action plan, right, has to have some specific tactical activities, which include what I need to learn quickly, who I need to talk to, who are the competitors, what is the business intelligence, how do I build my network? And all of this is going to shape my roadmap to allow me to have a successful start and achieve my goals in the technology industry. All right, and all of these micro goals will lead to my core goals, to doing a good job, and what success will look like in the tech industry. And one of the things that, I try to surround myself is to surround myself with people that can help me to remove my blockers. I get career tips from women leaders, for example, by joining the Singapore Computer Society. To be honest with you, I don't even know what it takes when I first joined Singapore Computer Society. I just joined in the form, and then voila, I get into be a member. And then therefore I get myself certified. I get myself understanding about the terminology within the technology industry. So overcoming even sometimes, our own self-limiting belief. Sometimes we have negative self-talk, are we going to be fearing of rejection? Do some of my questions sound silly? Will there be rejections, failures, procrastination, or even sometimes our own, overthinking, our own anxiety is sometimes our own blocker. So I'm very extremely humble that many people have helped me to remove my blockers. And the next is that I ask myself, right, if I come into this industry itself, it is very important that I'll be very bold. Be bold in a sense whereby I'll be bold to ask questions. I'll be bold to have my own courage and be really confident, to be passionate and stay focused on my goals. Remember the roadmap. All right, so I cannot fail, and I want to make sure that it is successful for myself, to the people around me, and also the individuals that I'm going to bring into the technology industry. So one of the things that I would encourage for individual is to be bold, stay positive with networks, remain teachable, continuous learning, continue to learn from our mistakes, and then don't dwell on it. Don't let someone tell you that it cannot be done. And the last is that I find myself mentor. When you rise up to the challenge, you find that tech work is such an interesting and valuable learning experience because we're all surrounded by tech. Even my grandma is surrounded by app, whereby she could be able to order food for herself, all right, and be empowered to use all of this technology. And you know that you can do it alone, but having a support system will help you find yourself faster and going further. So I would encourage you to find a mentor. Well, it can be related to tech industry or not tech industry, but I know over here, people like RT, people like John, they will be very happy to be mentors and mentoring others to be successful. And I'm very privileged. I have multiple mentors. This include my ex-bosses, bosses who has retired, but they continue to help me along my journey. And so with that, I promise to give back to the society as a mentor as well. On that note, I'd like to share back some of the things that Citrix is doing in order to also help others in terms of nurturing mentorship. Hang on a minute. Moving to the next slide. Alrighty. Okay, so with that, I transit to share about the importance of mentorship. It's really never too early to have a mentor. And Citrix has a global mentorship program in place for all our employees to participate and connect with a mentor or even mentoring mentors themselves. So at Citrix, we leverage not only on the employee resource group, as well as the CSR programs to connect our mentors and mentees and cultivate relationship internally and externally by supporting the communities where employees live and work, all right? This is a major tenet of doing meaningful job with a purpose. And this is what Citrix culture is all about. So we support the employee engagement by giving employees the flexibility to support causes that matters to them on when and how they choose to give back. And this is a huge pivot to help facilitate mentees as well as the mentor's personal growth. So we also provide 16 hours of paid volunteer time to support charities and choices of the CSR program. Now, locally, how do we operationalize it? We are very pleased to say that we support together with the Singapore University of Social Sciences, whereby we work together with them, and we actually have this sort of a scholarship program for open to all nationalities in which they can actually apply. And this is a full scholarship sponsored for female undergraduates who are keen to go into design and artificial intelligence or information systems technology and design programs. So this is something that we are very proud to be able to share back with the Institute of Higher Learning. But at the same time, right, it is also important that we also nurture the younger generation. So we also partner with the United Women Singapore and is proud to inspire and support the ITE students by supporting them with training on financial literacy. And we also pledge 50 book prizes for the ITE students who are part of the United Women Singapore STEM mentorship program along with Citrix, right? So it's important that you continue to nurture and find mentors, and also maybe next time in return, you become a mentor, and based on the skills, your competencies, or even, cross locations to find people that you could be able to help them to focus on growth and development. So around this mentorship program, it's really designed to help connect employees to one another, cultivate strong relationships, and facilitate personal growth and enable career success. So here, we all encourage you to find a mentor in your workplace to nurture and go beyond diversity and inclusion, and hopefully empower your career advancement and increases your confidence and also your job satisfaction. All right. And, joining today, the webinar session is one of the best platforms for you to be able to find mentors as well. All right. And get the network. All right. So with that, we hope our audience here can find some useful sharing and be bold to find your way into STEM and to accelerate your career success and personal growth in the tech world. So please feel free to connect us. We are, at Citrix, we are hiring massively across various geographies for both permanent positions and internships globally. So I welcome you to connect with me. And with that, I'm going to hand it over back to our host and get ready for the next speaker. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Annie. It's really, Citrix has been really doing a lot for all the our young generations. Thank you so much. Next up, we will have Clara. She's currently now the co-founder for Tech for She. Let's hear from her how she, convert from a non-tech to an IT sector. Clara, please.
Hi everyone. So nice to hear from all of you, and thank you for joining us here today. I really do hope that my short presentation will be useful for anyone who wants to break into the tech industry coming from a non-technical background. And also for those who do have a technical background, I think that my presentation will still be useful. I do have some tips about learning and finding mentors similarly to Annie. So I think we have a lot of synergy there, and it will be very useful for everyone. So I'm just going to get started. That today I'm going to be sharing about just 5 steps, 5 incremental steps that you can take to break into the tech industry. And before that, I just want to share a little bit about myself. So I think Rachel did a really great job at giving me an introduction that I came from a psychology background. And when I graduated, I also co-founded 2 things. One was an agri-tech startup, and then the other one was Tech for She. And I think now I've been working for more than 4 years as a UX, a user experience designer and researcher, worked for clients such as HDB, A-Star, Porsche, Cycle and Carriage. And I think what made me here, what got me here today is accumulation of the people I've met along the way, the skills I've picked up, and also my psychology background. So I think, regardless of what background you come from, there's a lot that you can transfer to the tech industry. So I just want to start off with talking about how some myths that we might have about the industry. So I think one huge one is about how you need a formal degree in tech to land a job in tech. And I think this is something that really intimidated me when I wanted to join. So here are some pictures that I'm just sharing for a story that I want to share, which is that in my final year, I went to Silicon Valley with my classmates as part of SMU. And over there, I was at Facebook and we were just having lunch at Facebook at Menlo Park. And one of the software engineers there, who's also Singaporean, asked the whole class, who here doesn't have a computer science degree? And everyone in my class were from the school of IS, so most of them did. So I was very shy and I was like, oh yeah, me. Then he was like, oh, you're gonna get a job at Facebook. And I was like, whoa, that's like something I want, but how is that possible? And then he immediately said, said that he came from an accounting background, how he did a boot camp in software engineering, and how he made the transition. And I think that was the first time I ever heard that story. And ever since then, I've heard of so many other people who have done the same thing. Someone who studied environmental science at NTU is now doing data science. So a lot of people I know have done the switch. And what I want to say is that instead of thinking you need a formal degree, what you really need to do is to own your journey. So here are 4 questions that after today, I hope you can reflect on and hope that it helps you as you think about breaking into the tech industry. The first one is about thinking about whether you have any transferable skills. So when I studied psychology and did research, I really loved it, but I didn't want to do a PhD. I didn't want to become a psychiatrist or a professor, but I knew that I loved studying human behavior. So that was when I realized that in the tech industry, there's such a thing as user experience where it's all about understanding your users, understanding how people behave on the application platform. And I realized that synergy and immediately made that connection. A second thing is to ask yourself is if there's any non-technical roles that you want to pursue, because the tech industry also has non-technical roles, and those are equally exciting opportunities for you. The third thing is there anything you've done outside of school? So this is for the students here that could be applied to tech. And if you haven't done anything outside of school or work, can I then start a passion project or a side hustle of my own that can showcase my IT prowess? And I think the second myth is about, hey, but I'm not interested or good at programming. Then if I'm not interested in programming or coding, then the career in tech is not for me. And this is something that I think we also need to break this myth, because if you just look at this statistic here from Glassdoor, almost half of the jobs in the tech industry are non-technical. And I just put up this little infographic about a few examples of non-technical jobs in tech and how much they pay, which you can Google online after this entire talk as well. So instead of thinking that way, what you can think about is expanding your point of view of what a career in tech even looks like. So actually, I'm of a personal belief that IT is no longer just an industry, because digitalization is happening across industries. And so you might want to continue staying in your industry right now, which could be maybe maritime engineering, or it could be nursing. But in every industry, even the healthcare industry, tech is still something that is happening. Digitalization is happening. And so learning IT skills is becoming as ubiquitous as learning how to use our phone. And not every tech job requires programming. So some jobs just require applying technical understanding to business scenarios, which is also a skill that is important to pick up. So here I have a book recommendation called Swipe to Unlock, which is something I read when I was trying to break into the industry. It gives a lot of good stories across companies like Uber, Facebook, and different technical terms on like cloud computing, algorithms, machine learning, to kind of get you started on being comfortable using those terms and giving you that confidence to start using those terms in your everyday language. Next, I think it's also important to adopt the right career mindset before we actually talk about the hard skills required to break into the industry. So I have this little comic here, which I don't know where the source is from, but if anyone knows, please feel free to tell me. But so this little comic really got me through some of the days when I was really stressed about my career, because I was thinking, oh, if I choose a career in tech, then I can't choose a career somewhere else. There's only one path to take. But this comic really encouraged me to know that that's not true. Like, there's only one career path, which is yours, and the skills you pick up along the way go with you as you transition across industries. So I wanted to share 2 book recommendations here. One is What I Wish I Knew When I Was 20, which is by a Stanford professor I really admire called Tina Selig. And the other one would be The Startup of You, which is by Reid Hoffman, the ex-CEO and also co-founder of LinkedIn. So I think one question to ask yourself when you're thinking about your career is about the impact you want to make in the next 40 to 50 years of your life. And so I have these 4 points that I think really helped me along my way when I was thinking about my career. The first one being that a career is a marathon and not a sprint. You have time to switch. You have time if you make a mistake. And the second one is about being purpose-driven. What kind of change do I want to bring to the world? Because if we're only in a career for finances or for someone else other than ourselves, it's very hard to commit to it and show up every day at work. And the third one is to ask yourself, what have I done in the past? And what am I doing in the present? And what do I want my future to look like? And kind of connect the dots along the way. What have I done in the past that could be applied to what my future wants to look like? And the fourth thing is that I really do believe that learning is forever. So when we graduate from school, it's always good to treat everything as a learning experience, because there's still so much to learn after you graduate. And even if you're not in the job you want right now, you can always take more steps towards learning that could lead you to the job that you want. And then I guess the third thing that I think is really important to think about when you are choosing a career in tech is about picking a niche purposefully. So I think a lot of people, they pick a niche based on what's trending. For example, oh, data is trending, so I need to get a job in cloud computing. But I think it's important first to identify the various roles in the IT industry. I think a lot of people think that the biggest role in the IT industry is a software engineer, but there are so many more jobs than being a software engineer. And then the second thing would be to kind of give yourself a pilot test on a few options that you're thinking about. So perhaps you're interested in design, in data, and cloud computing, and then perhaps maybe give yourself a trial period of 2 to 3 months to kind of understand a little bit more about cloud computing, whether you will really like it for the few months that you're trying to work on it. And then last but not least, always pick a field you're willing to commit to when it gets hard, because it definitely will get hard and you will face challenges. So it's always important to pick a niche very purposefully and not just pick what's trending out there. Now that we have covered some of the industry myths, having the correct mindset, and then picking a niche, I think it's now time to make a plan for your transition to tech. So I think when I was thinking about how to make an actionable plan, I was thinking about it in two ways. One of them was learning, and the other one was my career plan. So when it comes to your learning plan, I think it's important that we remember that we should set time blocks for consuming knowledge, but also very important to build and test, because in the tech industry, a lot of the jobs are very hands-on, especially the technical ones, because it's about the projects you build to showcase your work and your talent. And so it's important to not just be reading and watching videos and going for boot camps and absorbing knowledge, but also testing and building and honing your skills along the way. And if you can, it would be great if you can hear your story and share your journey on LinkedIn. I know so many people who share their like 50 days out of 100 days of coding. And I think it's really lovely to share out, put it out there, put yourself out there, because then other people are inspired to learn. Other people are inspired to learn tech. Yeah, and I think while you're learning, it's also good to start thinking about what you want your career plan to look like. And one thing that I think has really helped me when I was building my resume is always making sure that my resume is tailored to tech companies by using the Google's XYZ format, which if you do a quick Google search, it just shows you that shows a really clear format for structuring your resume. And then besides your resume, it will be also good if you can showcase some of your portfolio. So what are the work and passion projects you've done outside of work that showcase who you are? And last but not least, really important if you can, to build a personal brand that tells your story, because there are so many people graduating the same degree or graduating from the same background. And so you want to differentiate yourself, not to show off in any way, but more of just to tell your personal story and to show why you should be hired as well. And I think one thing when it comes to planning is that it's really hard to see far ahead and stick to it. So these are just 3 tips that I have for sticking to your plan. The first one is having a routine and process that works for you and doing it regularly. So for example, if you want to break into cloud computing, it might be good to tell yourself, okay, I'm going to set aside 2 hours every day after work just to watch a YouTube video about the cloud computing industry, or to get my AWS certification, something like that. And tell yourself you're going to set aside a specific time every week to do it and stick to it. And if you don't, then it's good to also have an accountability partner to journey with you, someone to tell you, hey, you can do this, someone who believes in you strongly. And last but not least, I think it's also important to remind yourself that it's good to have these deadlines, but if you don't hit it, it is really, really okay. So I've had many times in my life where certain things crop up. Maybe you had to deal with family issues or personal things happen. So I think it's important to be flexible and recognize that if you don't hit it, it's really okay. As long as you're making progress every day, I think that's what matters most in your journey. So And the last thing I just wanted to share is about the importance of fostering meaningful networks. I think networking gets a really bad rep for being superficial or not being meaningful. But I just want to share that it's very important that we network meaningfully. So I think the last part of this quote talks about how networking is a cultivation of mutually beneficial give and take win-win relationships. Works best when we emphasize on the giving part. I think that's something I believe in strongly. And I just wanted to share a few ways you can foster meaningful networks. So I think the first one is that you can definitely join a like-minded community. So perhaps that could be with the Singapore Computer Society. It could be with Tech for She. It could be at work. But when you surround yourself with people who inspire you, it really greatly influences you and keeps you driven and really changes the way you approach your work in your everyday life. Second one, similarly to Annie, I talk about professional mentors, and I agree with her that it's important to not just have one, but a few mentors. I read somewhere online about how it's important to have mentorship stack. So for example, having a mentor for maybe technical skills, another mentor for maybe personal relations about how to work, how to navigate the workplace, or another mentor regarding something else, because everyone has something to bring to the table. And it's really important, and it's also good to not just have one mentor so that you can have a diversity of voices that influence you. And then last but not least, I think it's important that we recognize that everyone starts out at a differing position of privilege, and we can always do more to lift up those who can benefit from our network or resources. And so I think it's always good if we can lift someone else up in our network. So I guess what I've covered today was about breaking into the tech industry, but I hope you see that actually it's just 5 steps to have a meaningful career in the IT industry or whichever industry you choose next. So I think 5 key takeaways is that it's never too late to switch a career path. Secondly, your career is really here for the long haul. And thirdly, it's very important to choose a niche that you believe in strongly. And then once you have, it would be good if you can double down on what you set to do. And last but not least, always remember that you're not alone in this journey, and whenever you can, to help out those around you. So if anyone's interested, feel free to join the Tech for She community on Telegram. So here's a QR code to join us. We have a lot of interesting programs like mentorships and also learning programs for women and men who want to learn technical skills. And I just really hope that today was a really informative presentation for me. So thank you for listening. I really hope that it empowers you and opens you up for more possibilities in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Clara. There's so many nuggets of truth that we all can learn from what you have shared. It's so inspiring. Okay, next up, we're going to move to our panel discussion. So we're going to hear from 2 other panelists, Artie and John. So are you excited? From just now earlier, it's already been so interesting. I'm sure that our second half of this webinar will be even more enriching. Michu?
Sure, thank you so much, Clara, as well as Annie for that rise up pitch, and then Clara, how you debunk all the myths. I do want to invite our 2 other guests to join us on the panel discussion today. So if I may, can I ask Artie to first give a short introduction, and then we'll ask John to do the same. So Artie?
Great, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me today for what so far has been an incredibly inspiring conversation. So my name is Artie, and I lead the customer success team at LinkedIn for Asia Pacific. But I'm also a mum of 3 kids, as you can probably see from the employer branding in my background. I call myself a lifelong learner. I love to learn. I'm immersed in learning all the time. And I'm also, fun fact, an aspiring DJ as well. So looking to build my skills in a different way. Just a very high level. So I made a mid-career switch, had spent most of my career in HR, and I moved into customer success 4 years ago. And the role I do today didn't exist 5, 7, 10 years ago. So I'm very interested in the topic of how do we stay relevant as the world of work around us is changing. And let me hand over to John.
Thank you very much, Artie, and thanks so much to the Singapore Computer Society for having me. Annie and Lee Chu, I knew about you guys and you were obviously impressive, but Clara, oh my God, that was awesome. I mean, truly inspiring. And those who have the opportunity to listen today, please do share her details, because Clara, I think you're going to be bombarded with requests for tips, advice, mentorship, advising. I mean, you're phenomenal. About myself, from New York, been in Asia just about next month will make 18 years. I've been with the same firm, Michael Page, the global recruitment company, for 16 years, in Japan for 5, China for 6, and Singapore for the last 4.5. This topic, it really comes from deep and very personal with me. My mother moved to the States when she was in her teens, got a master's degree, spoke 6 languages. I have one sister who's an MD, another who's a PhD, and I just thought that was normal. I thought, so it goes in New York. 18 years in Asia and doing recruitment, where my clients literally say, I must have a male, or I can't have this, or it must be this, or it's just been thrown in my face, and I'm inundated with what I think of as just stupidity daily. So I am more than motivated, inspired to give back, to help, to do things like we're doing today. And I've spent the last few years in a very small, very humble way trying to champion this cause, because in a few years I'd like this conversation to not exist anymore, because it's already happening, and when we're already, you know, in the thick of it, and getting to be the normal. So thank you guys for having me, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Ari. So, you know, for this section, what we really want to do, and the objective of this, is to explore ways on how to nurture STEM, and also to discuss tech opportunities. I mean, we have such a diverse panel here, and we have so many, you know, experiences that I know each of you can share and bring meaning for this audience. So let me maybe, you know, just start off with the first segment, which is to talk about the opportunities in tech, right? And just developing the interest in technology and so forth. And, you know, I'm gonna ask Arti to first share perhaps your perspective and your view on where do you see the relevance of technology in the job market today. We heard Clara talk about the fact that really the opportunities are more than software engineers and all that. So as you look at LinkedIn and as you look at the market, what is the relevance of technology in the job market?
So thanks for the question, Lee Chu. And I might actually turn this question around and actually ask, where do we not see the relevance of technology in the job market today? Because I think, you know, Clara touched on it earlier, every company is becoming a technology company in some way. Every company, all of our customers that we see are going through some form of digital transformation. And, you know, I think if we think about the environment we're in, like Singapore has always been such an advocate for digitalization, but we all also know that COVID-19 has just really accelerated the use of this technology, even amongst those who weren't previously inclined. So we've seen a shift in probably 4 areas if we look at the job market. I think the first is, you know, as Singaporeans turn to online platforms to meet the needs like groceries and foods, we've seen a demand being fueled for talent that is skilled in logistics, warehousing, supply chain management, as organizations are providing like seamless service from point of sale to delivery. So that's one area. The second area is, as we know, organizations have really turned to digital and social media channels to engage with customers and employees as well. And this has actually driven up the demand for professionals who are skilled in digital marketing and social media. Thirdly, we've seen organizations actually adapt their technologies to serve new and changing customer needs. So that's actually driven higher demand for engineering talent. And then we've also seen a need around data and information. So we've seen an increase in demand for individuals who are skilled in data science and cybersecurity. So those are the 4 areas. And as we step back and look at the LinkedIn data, we still see that the top employers of tech skills come from IT and services, internet and computer software industries. But again, as we mentioned before, we're seeing tech jobs everywhere across all industries: financial services, telecommunications, management consulting, insurance, healthcare, hospital, really across the board.
Yeah, very, very well said. I mean, we are seeing technology, increasingly multidisciplinary, right? And many businesses are looking to embrace technology. I mean, we have no choice but to look at new ways also to do business as we go to a new normal. And against that backdrop, maybe a question for John. As you look at the market, what are some of the most sought after technology related positions, and how do you look at a job application and shortlist the right interviewees for these jobs?
That's a great question, and it's one we try to educate our clients all the time. I want to quote Claire in that the hot technology jobs aren't all technology, sort of stereotypical tech, like engineers or cybersecurity or data science. Especially here in Singapore, one of the hottest roles is kind of what you're doing, Li Chu, in that it's the commercial aspect of it. And you can think of commercial in two regards. One is really sort of proactive, the hunter mentality, where you are business development and bringing in new clients, really networking to bring in new relationships and to help. Oftentimes, a lot of these Western clients are trying to grow in this part of the world because the Southeast Asia really is an emerging market for everyone in US and Europe. Part of that, though, is also the account management and client service related, because it is so hyper competitive that you can't just sell. As we all know, it's a lot easier and more important to maintain a good client and keep bringing in new ones. So I mention that because the tech world, especially tech related companies, but as Annie and everyone mentioned, everything's tech these days anyway, and Artie obviously spoke about that, but specifically within that tech ecosystem, the commercial aspect, both bringing a new business in and maintaining the business, is absolutely imperative. On the flip side, there's three main pillars of core technology that all of our clients are all looking for. One is obviously the engineers, the architects, and there's degrees of that, so don't worry, you don't need to be the best top in class. There's more than enough positions out there. Second pillar is all things data science, data architects, and that's kind of a balance of the math, of the tech understanding, but able to make sense out of that data. And the big, obviously buzzwords around monetizing data. Companies have reams and reams of it, but what do you do with it, right? So that's super important. Finally, it's on security. And it's a pretty cool idea, security. We have so many new clients now who are in consumer and electronics, and even in auto, who they sort of embed technology into these products. But then it's scary to think, what if it's hacked into? Whether it be a car, whether it be a Dyson hair dryer, was one of the big clients we recruit for in cybersecurity. So with anything being an Internet of Things these days, meaning everything's sort of tech connected, that cybersecurity is becoming super important. So just to quote the guys, there's the three core tech roles that are hot, and then the commercial account management side.
Yeah, thanks, John. And, I think it's really helpful for you to call out the account management side, because as you think about the engineering roles and the, all things data roles and the security roles, it does seem very, very tech specific. And so this is where I want to bring back Clara, right? Because, I love the fact that when you were talking about your experiences and your tips, you talk about the fact that there are many non-tech roles in the tech industry. So as you think about skills that might be most helpful in preparing women, both tech and non-tech, to be more confident in applying for tech jobs, I mean, what do you think of as top skills?
Thank you for directing that question to me. I actually prepared an answer for this, and I think it's a little different than maybe what you might hear out there. This one word, which is creativity. So I think it's a bit different for what you might be thinking, but I just think that it's really important to be creative when you're thinking about how this might be a good role for you. In terms of, I think creativity is not in the art sense only, but being creative in terms of problem solving, being creative in terms of how to brand yourself, how to tell your story, and how to fit a skill that you think might not be relevant to the tech industry, but actually could be. So in one of the book recommendations I shared, so there's in Tina Seelig of the Stanford professor, she did mention that she wanted to get a business consulting role, but she had a neuroscience background. So you would think, coming from a neuroscience background, how do you switch to doing business consulting? So she managed to think about how she was always doing research on doing research in the lab, how that is applied to doing the same thing as doing market research for a business. So I think being creative like that is a skill that will be very, very good when you're thinking about how to get a role that is non-technical. At the same time, I think when you want to get a non-technical role in the tech industry, it's also very important to consider the business side of things in a technology company, because at the end of the day, every company needs to make enough revenue and profit in order to continue sustaining its business. And so it's very important to understand how the technology capabilities always apply to business scenarios. And I think John or Arti also talked about monetization. I think that's also very important to think about, which also applies creativity. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Clara, and you're spot on. You know, even from my perspective, as I look at potential candidates for the organization, technology itself is obviously critical, important, but what's more compelling is the ability to connect technology to business issues, you know, to the relevance of the organizations that we are supporting. So thank you for bringing that up. Maybe, you know, we're going to talk a little bit now about how to nail that job interview. And I'm going to go to Annie next, but I want to let the participants on this webinar know that if you have questions, please type them into the chat window. And if you have a specific panelist that you want to direct a question to, you can state that. Otherwise, we will redirect to the speakers themselves. So please feel free. Anything that pops up in your mind that you want an answer for, please type them in. We can't promise we'll have all the answers, but we'll definitely share our perspective. So Annie, a question for you, you know, as an interviewer and from Citrix's perspective, what do you look out for as you do an interview? How can a fresh graduate with perhaps no working experience wanting to get into a tech job, you know, position themselves in an interview?
Not a problem, sure. Thank you. I think it's a very good question and a very good segue to what Clara has actually mentioned. I think one of the key things is that, you know, for a candidate, when they apply for a job, obviously there are a set of competency. There is also the job description that depicts what exactly is the qualification or the certification that is required. But I think it's very important that we look at why, you know, why the person wants to join the company. So many a times, right, when I look at it in a very simple, you know, model, which I like to use the Simon Sinek, where they talk about the why, you know, and then the what, and also the how. So very importantly, in Citrix itself, we have interview guides for our hiring managers. But because it is now remote interview, we also want our candidate to be prepared and to be successful. We literally prepare a virtual interviewing guide for the interviewee, all right, so that they themselves can be confident. They themselves can also prepare for a successful interview as well. So looking at that itself, I think it has to be a win-win situation for both the interviewer and the interviewee who is participating in this conversation. We want to make sure that they have also positive experience. So many a times when we look at it, right, when we go through the set of competencies, we want to ask ourselves, do we just checklist all the competencies and try to find out during the interview? Do we find the evidence? Do we find relevant you know, information, data points, accomplishments, and so forth, in order to ensure that they pass the competency aspect of it? Obviously, we do have a checklist to say that, you know, what are the qualifications, what are the training, what are the certification that this person might already have in order to be able to fit into the role. But in all itself, right, I think when we look for the candidate itself and how does the candidate differentiate from candidate A to candidate B, it's not just the competencies or the qualification or the certification. What we are looking for is really the why. Why do you want to join this company? Why do you think that you are the best candidate for this job? We also wanted to know the what and the how, right? What does the candidate demonstrate that is related to the job? Not just bringing in the competency, but very much we also want to know, right, what exactly is their values, their behaviors that will help them uniquely to be able to position themselves in this job and able to do something that is beyond. So a lot of the times, although some of the job description can be related to engineering, to R&D, to what John has mentioned, account management or sales, you realize that many a times an interviewer is really looking for examples, is really looking for your accomplishments. What do you exhibit? How do you ace the interview? How do you talk about your competencies, in the context of, for example, problem solver, strategic thinker? How do you make decisions? How do you collaborate with teams? Are you disciplined? Are you a self-motivator? Are you creative in your project management? Do you come with the curiosity and the growth mindset? Right? So a lot of it is to demonstrate your how and what did you do in order to demonstrate those evidences in a very succinct way, but yet focus your attention on how to answer your why. All right. So I personally felt that if we come with the attitude, the authenticity, and exudes with the passion itself, that will probably be able to help you to ace the interview.
Thanks, Annie. I think, very practical tips of focusing on the why, what, and how, and just, I guess, getting into the right mindset when you have that interview, and I guess just being authentic, right? Being yourself and representing your experiences. That's something that we look out for as well in the AWS. So thank you so much for sharing that. I know on the panel we have, individuals who have done a lot of interviews, and so I'm just wondering whether any of you have anything else to add to what Annie has just offered here. John, any thoughts?
I was going to ask Artie if she had anything to share, because I know you guys do a lot of data around this, or thoughts.
Yeah, look, I think there's some really great points that have already been covered. The one I would just add, it's very simple, but it's just something I continue to look for, which is growth mindset. Like, we know that things are evolving. Like I shared at the beginning, the role I'm in today is not a role that even existed years ago. So how do we move from a know-it-all mindset to a learn-it-all mindset? And how do you demonstrate that in a way that I like to refer to confident humility, which is, I don't necessarily have all of the answers, but I have confidence in my ability to find the answers. And I think that's also so important in a tech environment, which is very innovative, because if we knew all of the answers, we wouldn't be trying to solve these problems that no one else can solve right now. So can you actually come with the right mindset? Can you collaborate well? Are you purpose-driven? Can you exude that passion, as Annie said earlier as well, to help the organization to solve bigger problems on behalf of customers?
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, all road leads back to the passion that we've been talking about across different speakers. And Adi, I'm just wondering, in your experience, I know we've talked a lot about enabling and empowering maybe graduates for their first interview and so forth, but do you think it is too late for any individual who might want to consider a mid-career change to tech? How does one get started if they've gone down a different path and now with tech being embraced in all disciplines, decided that tech might be a good place to go? What advice do you have?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as I reflect on this, I think I go back to, I think, Li Chu, you shared at the beginning some data from the World Economic Forum Future of Jobs report. And I think if we look at some of the data there, we know that some kind of 85 million jobs are going to go away by 2025 as a result of the shift from people to technology. Which of course sounds really scary, but then we also look in that report that they're predicting that 97 million new roles may emerge that are more adapted to this new division of labor. So I guess bottom line for me is it's definitely not too late. We're also, life expectancy is going up as well. We're like in this era of longevity. So we need to really be thinking about our careers in phases as opposed to just one career across our lifetime. So I think then the question is not an if, but a how. Like, not do you want to consider making a switch, but really, like, where do you want to make that investment in yourself? Because I think, as we've heard as well across today's discussion, there are so many different areas of tech that you can look at investing in yourself. And I also just want to share with everyone that LinkedIn has recently launched a new tool, which we call the Career Explorer. And you can find it if you just Google LinkedIn Career Explorer. We'll put the link in the chat here. And it just helps you to figure out, how do you navigate a career switch? So it matches people up with opportunities. It maps existing skills you have to thousands of job titles. So just to give a quick example, if you're a business analyst today and you're thinking about transitioning to an applications consultant, you already have about 50% of the skills required. So you have an understanding of software development lifecycle, you have an understanding of agile methodologies as an example. But what you can start to see through this Career Explorer tool is, what are some of those key skills that you would need to top up on to make that transition? So programming languages like Java and SQL. So you can figure out what skills you need. You can then connect with people who are in those roles as well. And you can also be directed to learning. And I think this is a really interesting tool, especially at this point in time where transitions are becoming more and more common, because there are so many more options available to us. And I think, Clara, you shared the word earlier, creativity. Like, we can be so much more creative in our career options than ever before. And I think tools like this just open our perspective to what is out there and what is available to us.
Thank you, Arti, for that. And, I'm thinking maybe one last question before we open up for our participants to ask anything that might be top of mind for them. And this is a question perhaps I have for Clara, because I think when you shared earlier about branding and marketing yourself, I think that's so important. Not so much to brag, but really to create the right impression, whether it is the first impression or the relevant impression. So in your experience, and based on everything that you've discussed with your mentors and your mentees, what would you say make the right first impression? How do you brand yourself?
Thank you, Li Chu, for that question. I'm not sure that I'm the most equipped to answer this because I'm not like from HR or anything, but I am recently looking for a new job. So I did do a lot of this research. And I think one thing that I would advise is to take a step back and just look at your entire career so far, and then kind of see where you've been, some of the stories that you can take from your experiences, and then when it comes to making that right first impression, it's about also condensing all of these things that make you into a few short sentences. Because I know that in a first impression, people don't want to hear a super long story; they just want to know you in an elevator pitch kind of style. So I do try my best to kind of shorten my story into less than maybe 10 to 20 seconds. So I think making it short but also compelling takes a lot of skill. Sounds easy to do because it's really short and fast, but actually it's really, really hard. So I think I would start with knowing my story, owning it, being confident about who I am, which is also another difficult thing because sometimes we have negative self-talk. So I think I would start with the mindset and all of that, and then try to make it concrete into a short elevator pitch about myself.
Cool, really like that. Any comments from the HR that we have, the HR experts that we have on the panel? Or maybe Annie, come on. In Citrix, how would you look at the right way to brand or to market oneself?
Yeah, correct. I think John will be able to share more also. I think you see a lot of candidates now, not from the tech industry. I mean, from an HR point of view, right? I think having a personal brand is something that they have to come with their authentic self. It's something that they are truthful to themselves. You don't want to be superficial or to be faking as to who you are not. It's important that your personal brand exudes in 3 different dimensions. I think number 1, your own personal, your personality. Number 2, in terms of how you come out in terms of your branding, for example, on LinkedIn. I think on LinkedIn itself, sometimes it tells a different story. Now, so I would always encourage for anyone who is looking for a career switch or even for engagement, for networking, to really be able to know in your personal brand, like a LinkedIn, for example, how you position yourself. What are your interest groups? What are the associations that you're following? What are the leadership that you're following? What sort of work do you contribute to the society? What sort of volunteer work are you keen about it? So this will help. And I know that, many of the individuals, not just leadership, but individuals who actually write different types of blogs as well. They talk about their own, feelings, about their own thoughts, what they feel passionate about. And this actually demonstrates in terms of what you truly believe in and what you truly represent as an individual. I think thirdly, also in looking for a role, your resume represents your personal branding. All right. And many times, these are your toolkits. So if you have a good resume, think about, it's not something that's one size fits all. I have, mentored many students, and I told them that, look, usually if you were to do one resume template and you try to send one resume template, right, to all the companies that you apply for, likelihood is that your hit rate is probably less than 5%. All right. But if you were to customize it and tailor and really make an effort to write about your career summary, about your career objectives, how that align to the company that you're applying for, the vision, the mission, the value statement, and what you can do differently to uniquely position yourself and make a value creation, to the company. Even the slightest thing about the project that you've done before. You might be a team lead, you might be a treasurer in your company or in your association that you are leading. All right, you could be also the secretary that is supporting the self-help group or volunteer group. So all of this will demonstrate some of your accomplishment, no matter how small it is, but because it is authentically you, you will be able to then create your own persona and your personal branding. So I hope that helps.
Thank you so much, Annie, and we'll get to John in a minute. But at this juncture, maybe let me just pause and check if there are any questions from our participants. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question, or if you feel more comfortable typing the questions into the chat box, please go ahead and do that as well. We'll be happy to take any questions.
I think we have a couple of questions.
Yeah, at the Q&A chat box.
Okay, because I am not seeing the questions. I'm sorry for some reason. Rachel, do you want to read the questions? Because I'm not seeing the questions.
All right. I'll probably post them on the chat box so that everyone could see.
Okay. I see that.
It's in the Q&A part. If you
yes,
look. Yeah.
I see it now. Okay, so I think we have a, hang on. Yes, so we have a question from an attendee. Hi, how did you know when you're ready to make the final switch to a career in IT? Like, I've been taking certs to get myself equipped with the necessary IT skills, but somehow just never feel ready to make a switch to a full-fledged IT job, also because of the lack of experience, I suppose. And I'm thinking, whether there's anyone on the panel that would like to take this question and feel passionate about this.
I would love to, because I feel very passionately about this, actually. I think there's something, there's a deeper question around, as women, will we ever be fully confident when we're applying to jobs? And if we look at the data, we see that women are generally applying to jobs when they're 100% confident that they meet the requirements, or when they meet 100% of the requirements. And we see data to say that men generally apply when they meet about 60% of the requirements. So I think that there is generally a broad recognition, especially if you're looking to make a career switch, that you're probably not going to have all of the skills that are listed. But I think this is also something that organizations, like a lot of our customers, are starting to really think about in job posts and job descriptions more thoughtfully because of this. So, For example, how complex is this job portrayed to be? If it says excellent coding skills, can it say coding skills instead? Or how many skills are put on the job description that are core to the role versus nice to have? So I think that's just something for us to bear in mind, that we often look at job descriptions and we get very overwhelmed that I can't check all the boxes, therefore I can't apply. But I think in this dynamic world in which we're in, we're probably never going to be able to fulfill. And if we do, maybe that's not the job for us as well.
If I can just jump in, Artie, I think that's a fantastic answer. I think to this question, though, take a step back. It's not when you're ready. How do you know when you're ready to make the final switch? To Artie's point, and to a phrase I really use with everyone I meet is, be brave, not confident. So you don't need to be confident you can do these jobs. And I don't think you need to know when you're ready. I think you just need to put yourself out there. And to go back into the myriad of slides we've seen and comments we've heard today about networking, getting mentors, at least going for interviews, and clearly just going for applications. What's the worst that happens? And this idea of being brave to put yourself out there, being brave to ask for a mentor, being brave to take up internships or volunteering or to join associations like the Singapore Computer Society, all of that is infinitely more important than confidence, because confidence can only come if you've even put yourself in the opportunity to learn more, to try more, to do more. And it's odd for me to say, but I think you're sort of right, Artie, in that I do feel significantly more men apply for jobs. I mean, I post a CEO job and we have males 25 in a year applying for CEO, but then you have women who I know haven't applied for the job, who then I call them and say, you could be great for this. Like, oh, but I'm not excellent, to contrary we say, or I only have 8 years, not 10. And you're like, oh, don't be silly. It doesn't matter. But just to go back to something that Annie mentioned, the authenticity is it. Very rarely are roles as focused on the technical component as we think they are. The chemistry, simply, does the interview remember you 1-2 hours after? And that level of just being yourself, and just showing that passion, that why you're interested. Annie made a great point about tailoring your CV. What I would say is take it one step forward. Find who the hiring manager is, look them up, actually just contact them directly and just say, I saw what your business has done, or I saw what you've done, or I saw you also studied psychology too and got into tech. Claire, that's me. So I'm nervous about this, but let's chat. And people will always remember and give you the benefit of the doubt over the hundreds of people who can do the technical part of the job, because that's the easy part. But you'd rather hire someone that you connect with and that you feel is authentic. So don't overcomplicate it. Just be you and be personal. I think you'll do fantastic.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Artie. I know we're coming up to time, but I really appreciate Annie Pang asking a number of questions. So, perhaps let's take one more question before I wrap up here. And Annie's question is really the fact that research have shown that we tend to hire people like ourselves. So is there a difference between, someone who is a business enterprise hiring a individual versus a HR employee, hiring an individual, and whether, it is a myth that females need more nurturing and encouragement than males in the workplace? So combining two questions into one and, inviting the panelists to kind of share their thoughts. And maybe we can start with Annie.
All right, it is a very big question, but I think this is fantastic, right? And to my point, I think about in any of the companies that we are looking at in terms of tech jobs, right? Specifically, there is no, we wouldn't say that, okay, we're just looking for male or we're just looking for female. We're really looking for diversity. So what does really diversity means? It really means to us at Citrix, right? It's a diversity of the thoughts, the ideas, the suggestion, the perspective, or even sometimes, challenging the status quo that you are bringing forward in terms of diversity. Because it is important as a technology industry itself, we are just not looking for a certain type of gender or a certain type of people that looks like me, because I don't look like the tech industry person, to be honest with you. I don't come into the tech world because I bring in a ton of, tech experiences. But to echo what earlier on Clara has mentioned, right? It is about bringing what is your values creation, right? It's about bringing the transferable skills It's about bringing what you can create a unique impact for the organization. What are the skill sets? What is your abilities? What uniquely you can position yourself in order to add that value to the organization. So I hope that helps. So typically, it's really not about male or female. It's about, you know, a diversity of perspectives.
I agree, Annie. I guess I can help to start off answering the second question about whether it's a myth that females need more nurturing and encouragement than males in the workplace. I actually think that it's not that females need more nurturing and encouragement compared to males. It's just that there's research that show that females often tend not to reach out for help as much or to seek out opportunities to get mentorship. And that's why like there are mentorship programs that exist for females that I know of. But I think in general, everyone kind of needs more encouragement and nurturing in the workplace. So I think that's what we hope to do today, to encourage everyone to not be afraid, to be brave rather than confident. I think these are all really, really important things to take away from today. Yeah. If anyone else wants to chime in.
Yeah, I would just add to that. I think it's a very solid statement that your success is not linear, meaning it's not the straight line you thought it would be. And this is key, because if confidence is not necessarily high and you're thinking about doing something you've not necessarily done and you want to try something new, of course there's going to be challenge, hiccups, mistakes, failed interviews, failed applications at the beginning. Just like a couple of us have said, it's a marathon, not a sprint. But this is why the nourishment, the mentorship is so important, but also belief in yourself. And don't ever worry about being perfect, or are you as good as the other technical savvy candidate? Who cares? The authentic you is probably a whole lot cooler than the tech savvy person who has no communication skills, because a lot of the roles we're hiring for now, it's actually people getting rejected because they have no social skills. So I think the tech's not, you know, there's lots of tech people out there. Just be yourself, but be resilient, because there's going to be a challenge at the beginning. And I think this is a great forum for it.
Thank you so much, John, and everyone on the panel. I just want to say that unfortunately we don't have more time to go over more of the questions, but I encourage you to seek all of us out on LinkedIn and ask those questions that didn't get answered here. For the panelists, let me just add my appreciation for your incredible insights and also your candor. I myself have found it to be super encouraging, and I hope that the participants have felt the same way too. As a wrap up, I would say that we are very excited that this year the Ministry of Social and Family Development has dedicated 2021 as the year of celebrating SG Singapore and SG Singapore women, I mean. In line with this, some of you might know that last year, the Singapore Computer Society and the SG Women in Tech had an initiative that launched, our SG 100 Women in Tech, where we honored 100 women in technology who and paying tribute and celebrating the role models that have been where women have inspired other women and girls to join the industry and to step up and to lead with impact and with focus. So in line with this MSF dedication of 2021 as the year of celebrating SG Women, we will be announcing and honoring rising stars in the tech industry for our second edition of the Singapore 100 Women in Tech. Nominations will be opening really soon. And we hope that, through this exercise, more young girls will discover their interests and passion. But if you know of young innovators in your school, or you know of role models in your workplace, this is a place where you submit your nominations so that we can get deserving female tech talents into the outstanding pool and be recognized. So appreciate you spending time with us this afternoon.